One of the greatest threats facing Israel is that nations like Iran and movements like BDS say Israel is illegitimate, with no right to exist in the world today. But some hope to restore a place in Israel they believe can be a new setting to defend Israel's rightful place among the nations. The historic Villa Melchett on the shores of the Sea of Galilee is seen by many as a symbol of the spirit of early British Zionism, the dream of the Jewish people to return to their homeland. Built before the State of Israel was born, the villa was birthed at the crossroads of the early days of Zionism and the life of Sir Alfred Mond, the first Baron of Melchett. Known as Lord Melchett, a British industrialist, financier, and politician, was a close confidant of Lord Arthur Balfour. That relationship allowed him to play an influential role in two major events leading to the modern state of Israel. Working behind the scenes, Lord Melchett helped shape the 1917 Balfour Declaration, advocating a homeland for the Jewish people, and the 1920 San Remo resolution that enshrined the Balfour Declaration into international law. The following year, Lord Melchett traveled to then British Mandate Palestine, along with Chaim Weizmann, who would become the first president of the State of Israel. Visiting the Jewish homeland changed his life, as he wrote, "I have learned much I didn't know, and which possibly no one who is not a Jew will ever be able to understand, for it can only be felt. But the hills of Judea are today as dramatic as in the days of the prophets. I have never lived so intensely as a Jew before." This encounter with his Jewish roots and the land of Israel inspired Lord Melchett to build the Villa Melchett here in the Galilee. It became a place of influence where he and later his daughter Violet, the Marchioness of Reading, would receive world leaders and opinion shapers of the time to present and explain the Zionist miracle. Among those visiting the villa included playwright George Bernard Shaw, military strategist General Orde Wingate, and David Ben Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel. More recently, Beniamin Netanyahu and his wife spent an anniversary there as they praised its historical significance and beauty. Almost 100 years on from its original purpose, Lord Simon Reading, Lord Melchett's great-grandson, has a dream of reviving the spirit of Villa Melchett.
My grandmother lived here for 4 decades, and we want to carry on the baton that she had for 4 decades. It was in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s when she used to invite people of influence from around the world here, and we want to do the same from now on.
An example of carrying on the baton took place at this dinner event, hosted by Lord Reading, that included leaders from Passages, a U.S. ministry introducing young Christians to Israel, along with representatives of the World Jewish Congress.
The future of this place is that I would like to carry on with my wife the baton which my grandmother had for 40 years of bringing people of influence and politicians and diplomats and ambassadors here to talk privately to people.
The Villa Melchett is an amazing history. I mean, it's just one of those sort of secret places.
Carrie Summers, CEO of the Nehemiah Group, brought the Passages members to Villa Melchett and says it can play a unique role in Israel today.
It's very difficult to get into Israel, conduct business without a whole lot of people knowing about it. And sometimes you simply need a place that reminds you of history and what did take place, and a place that's quiet, very private, and more leaders are looking for that today. It's harder to find, and I think Villa Melchett will eventually serve that same purpose it did over 70 years ago.
Up next, more on the Villa Melchett and how it can play a role in the future of the Jewish state. Here's more on the story of the Villa Melchett and how the international community is getting involved. As part of the Villa's revival, Lord Reading partners with the European Coalition for Israel, an advocate for the Jewish state with international diplomats, including at the United Nations and the European Parliament. Thomas Sandel is the founding director of ECI.
And our vision is to see this villa be restored to its former glory, so to speak, because still today there is a need to tell this story, to retell this story, both of the vision and the dream, but also what is the reality today. So we would like to see, as we say, we're engaging with diplomats, elected leaders around the world, and we think this would be an amazing place where we could tell the story off the record, off the radar, as some has called it. Maybe this could become Camp David of Israel.
Reading says the overall result could lead to greater international support for Israel.
At the moment, we have 42 nations who support Israel and vote for Israel. And now what we want to do is we want to extend that, expand that. We want to go up to 50, 60, 70. And the way to do this is to invite foreign ministers, diplomats, ambassadors to come here and convince them that they must come and vote for Israel at the UN.
What we would like to do is to bring these leaders, elected leaders or diplomats to Israel, that they could see for themselves what Israel is all about. And the State of Israel, the Foreign Ministry, do it with great success, bringing UN diplomats, for example, to Israel. And we think this could be one program in the itinerary. And especially for, say, African ambassadors, where faith is so important in everything they do. I know this will resonate very well with them to understand that the Jewish state didn't just happen. It came about because of godly men and women, Jewish and Christians alike, that they had this dream, they had this vision, which was grounded in the Hebrew Bible.
Much has changed since the time of Lord Melchett. Israel is now known as the startup nation, bringing cutting-edge technology and innovation to the world. It has also made new friends in the Arab world through the Abraham Accords. Still, challenges remain, from the global rise of anti-Semitism to the BDS movement, designed to delegitimize the Jewish state, and powers like Iran committed to Israel's destruction. Lord Reading, Sandel, and Summers believe the need to defend and support Israel is more important than ever.
I'm not a prophet, but all you have to do is look at the time clock, and the time clock of the return of Jesus is Israel. And look what happened in the last 2 years. Look what's happened in the last 6 months. Look what's happened in the last month. If there's ever a time, truly, I know every generation has said this, but the time clock is now. We see it, and we see it coming. This is needed now, because you've got to have the good guys gather, and Villa Melchett, I think, is the ideal location for that.
We are living not in a period of peace anymore. We all know that, and God knows what will unfold in the next few months. But there are so many dark clouds on the horizon, and I think we have no time to lose. And the situation for Israel is very problematic geopolitically to navigate and to balance. So I believe now Israel needs all the diplomatic support it can get. And I think this could be one strategic asset to be considered.
Lord Reading believes the formula is the same as 100 years ago, when his great-grandfather created this place for great minds to meet and create friendships in an effort to educate international leaders of the need for a Jewish state.